Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna. Then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will.
The Cleveland Browns thought their biggest headache was just finding someone who could throw the ball straight. But then, Jason Kelce opened his mouth and dropped a truth bomb so brutal it sent the team's billionaire owner into full panic mode. Pacing the office, probably breaking pencils, maybe even Googling how to sell an NFL franchise without crying. The man was heated, and now the whole front office is sweating harder than their quarterback in the fourth quarter. So what did Kelce say that blew up Cleveland like this? Get ready. This one's dirtier than their own playbook. See, the Browns have built an entire legacy around two things: heartbreak and pure comedy. If losing had a Hall of Fame, Cleveland would have its own wing, complete with a trophy case bigger than the Cowboys' confidence. Every season, fans think, maybe this is the year. And every season, the football gods laugh. But just when it looked like the Browns were starting to act like a real franchise, Kelce, freshly retired, beer in hand, not a care in the world, decided to drop a reality nuke right on top of their fragile hope. He basically said, "Congrats, Cleveland, you're still Cleveland." And that's when the meltdown began. The owner reportedly went from calm morning coffee to full-on who do I blame first mode. 1 call to PR, 2 to legal, and probably 3 to his therapist. Because this wasn't just shade, this was a full eclipse. Let's be real though, this is the same team that once believed Johnny Manziel was the next Joe Montana. The same geniuses who brought back Hugh Jackson on purpose.
We seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
And don't forget that glorious move where they traded their dignity for Deshaun Watson and expected applause. The Browns don't just fail, they rebrand failure. Still, credit where it's due, for a brief shining moment last season, things actually looked good. The plays were crisp, the fans had hope, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, the curse was finally lifting. But then came Jason Kelce, and his mic drop truth set the whole city spinning again. The front office was already celebrating like they just won the Super Bowl. Stefanski was being called a genius, the dog pound was losing its mind, and fans were barking from rooftops. But then, bam, reality stepped in, and it didn't just tap them on the shoulder, it choked them out. Jason Kelce showed up swinging from retirement, putting the entire Browns organization in a metaphorical headlock. The man's fresh off an incredible career with the Eagles, redefining what it means to be a lineman, showing up to parades in wild costumes, and now living his best unfiltered life. And what did he see when he looked at Cleveland? Not contenders, just chaos wrapped in duct tape and labeled innovation.
Throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that? Now, what's more horrible about this game was it was to the point on every single...
Kelce didn't whisper his thoughts either, was he basically held up a neon sign flashing, "Cleveland, you're in trouble," in bold letters. Normally, the Browns front office would just shrug off that kind of criticism. They've heard it all before. But this hit different, because this isn't some random dude yelling on a podcast. This is Jason Kelce, a Super Bowl champ, a locker room leader, and a man who knows what a real football organization looks like. When someone like that speaks, people don't just scroll past, they listen. And that's exactly what sent Jimmy Haslam into meltdown mode. Picture this, the billionaire owner pacing in circles, face red, muttering about loyalty, while his assistants pretend to be invisible behind their laptops. The man looked like he was one bad headline away from throwing his phone out the window. Let's not forget, Haslam already bet the farm on Deshaun Watson, a $230 million guaranteed contract that now looks like a financial handcuff. Watson missed games, looked rusty when he finally played, and left the Browns broke, frustrated, and tied up tighter than a college kid drowning in credit card bills. And now Kelce just said the quiet part out loud.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is who's going to be the backup in Cleveland. Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals.
This whole operation might be one injury away from total collapse. Jason Kelce didn't just throw shade, he dropped pure truth bombs. He pointed out what everyone's been thinking, but too scared to say out loud. Cleveland handcuffed itself to a quarterback who hasn't looked elite in years. Even Joe Flacco's surprise playoff run couldn't cover up the ticking time bomb hiding in that locker room. And that's where the irony gets wild. The Browns front office isn't mad about their own bad decisions. They're mad that someone noticed. It's like a magician losing his cool because the crowd figured out the rabbit was hiding in the hat all along. Meanwhile, the fans weren't angry. They were nodding like, yeah, he's right. Because if there's one thing Browns fans know better than anyone, it's disappointment. They can smell an incoming collapse from a mile away. They've lived through every kind of heartbreak imaginable. Bad trades, cursed kicks, and quarterbacks that vanish faster than playoff hopes. They know the drill. Kelce's point hit deeper than people realize. This team's entire future hangs by one ligament. When your offense depends on one guy with a monster contract that eats your cap alive, you're one torn ACL away from watching the whole house of cards fall apart.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
And in the AFC North, that's a death sentence. Lamar Jackson is out there running like he's got cheat codes. Joe Burrow could roll up in a hospital gown and still drop 300 yards on you. And the Steelers, they don't rebuild, they reload. But the Browns, they're that kid at recess who finally learns how to tie his shoes, then trips over them 2 seconds later. That's Cleveland in a nutshell. So yeah, Jason Kelce didn't just talk, he surgically exposed the weak spot. He didn't insult them. He diagnosed them. He reminded everyone that the Browns' so-called bright future looks less like a Super Bowl path and more like an unpaid parking ticket stacking late fees every week. And Jimmy Haslam couldn't handle it. Not because it was mean, but because it was true. When words like that come from someone like Jason Kelce, they don't just echo, they roar. And Jimmy Haslam? Let's just say, handling criticism has never been his strong suit. This is the same man who's turned the Browns into his personal science experiment, swapping out coaches and quarterbacks like spoiled milk in a fridge. And now, with Kelce casually stating what everyone else has been whispering, Haslam reportedly went nuclear. You'd think someone had insulted his family instead of his football team. It's wild. A billionaire NFL owner losing his mind over comments from a retired lineman who's not even in his conference. But this isn't really about Jason Kelce, not at its core. It's about what he represents.
You're a betting man. Who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
You got a problem.
you have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no, that kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain.
He's the mirror Cleveland's been avoiding for years, the one that shows the truth no amount of PR can hide. Kelce didn't just criticize them, he reminded the Browns that their Cinderella story with Joe Flacco was exactly that, a fairy tale. Midnight hit, the magic faded, and the pumpkin carriage was parked right back outside the stadium. The irony is painful and poetic. The Browns have had one of the most chaotic quarterback situations in the entire league. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be the savior, the chosen one, the $230 million miracle. Instead, he's been hurt, rusty, and playing like a guy still searching for the end zone on Google Maps. And then came Joe Flacco, the backup no one saw coming.
What we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski.
The man was sitting at home, probably mowing his lawn, when Cleveland called in desperation. Next thing you know, he's slinging touchdowns like it's 2012 again. Fans went from disbelief to full nostalgia mode. For a moment, it looked like Joe might have found the fountain of youth in his garage, and the Browns, they thought they'd found redemption. But Kelce reminded everyone, it was just another chapter in Cleveland's endless cycle of chaos and false hope. Joe Flacco walked into Cleveland like he owned the place.
Of a mustard seed, right? Because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ, right? Like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV, right? Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you, and you're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
Calm, confident, and slinging bombs downfield like it was 2012 all over again. In just a few weeks, the man made the entire franchise look ridiculous. A 39-year-old who hadn't even memorized the playbook yet outshined their $230 million franchise quarterback. That's not just embarrassing, that's humiliation at the franchise level, the kind that sticks to your legacy like a stain that won't wash off. It screamed one thing loud and clear: that quarterback situation, a full-blown disaster waiting to happen. Even the Browns' so-called success last season felt like smoke and mirrors, shiny on the surface, hollow underneath. And Jason Kelce, he didn't just comment on it, he ripped the curtain right off. He exposed the Wizard of Haslam, a billionaire hiding behind PR statements.
Official depth chart that they released prior to the preseason game, where now Tyler Huntley would be, right behind Flacco. They need to take Flacco and just put him away, get him ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, don't even worry.
Put him in the cryo chamber that Bobby Carpenter sleeps in every night.
Does not need to play at all. Barely practice, because they're having to sign now another quarterback. And keep in mind, they already have Watson, who's on the...
Hoping no one notices that his contender is one bad hit away from crumbling. No wonder Haslam's been losing sleep. He's been selling fans this dream of stability, progress, and a new era. And then Kelce, smoothie in hand, casually reminds the world that Cleveland's still driving the same old clown car, just with shinier paint. And the fans, they didn't get mad, they laughed. Browns fans turned social media into a comedy festival. Memes everywhere, sarcastic tweets saying we're doomed, and even posts thanking Kelce for saying what they've been yelling into their pillows for years. That's what really cut deep. Realizing your own fan base agrees more with a retired lineman than with you, the billionaire owner. That's pain money can't fix. Then came the media storm. Sports talk shows feasted on the chaos like it was Thanksgiving dinner. headlines screaming Cleveland in crisis, debates raging over whether Deshaun Watson was the worst deal in NFL history, rival fan bases piled on like it was open season. It didn't matter that the Browns had a top 5 defense, a playoff appearance, or even a Coach of the Year award. None of it changed the narrative.
About the Cleveland team on why we can't get over this fact that we can't get our franchise quarterback. I mean, you see the jerseys. I'm tired of seeing the jerseys. I'm tired of the names just going and going and going. I literally thought Brandon Weeden was going to be our guy at one point. And then I'll never forget I think it was a preseason game, a flag goes over his head and he's trying to get out of the flag while they're doing the national anthem. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my...
Somehow, some way, Cleveland still looked like a disaster in progress. And Jason Kelce just handed everyone the punchline. And here's the kicker. Most of this mess is their own fault. Seriously, other franchises make mistakes, but the Browns, they marry theirs. They don't just trip on the sidewalk. They build a monument to the fall, cut the ribbon, and celebrate it like it's progress. That Deshaun Watson deal wasn't a gamble. It was a full-blown kamikaze dive into chaos, with every single dollar guaranteed. You could practically hear accountants across the league fainting. So when Jason Kelce pointed out that Cleveland chained itself to that deal, the truth hurt. Because deep down, the Browns know they're stuck. They can't cut Watson. The contract's too heavy. They can't trade him. Nobody wants that financial grenade. Unless Watson somehow morphs back into his Houston prime, Cleveland's tied to him like a ball and chain at the bottom of Lake Erie. Meanwhile, Joe Flacco rolled in like the ghost of Christmas past, reminding everyone what competent quarterback play actually looks like. Browns fans didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or start building him a statue. The man had barely unpacked his bag, probably still living out of a hotel, and he was saving their season. While Watson sat on the sideline collecting guaranteed millions, Flacco was turning chaos into touchdowns. That's not a fairy tale. That's a sitcom with a tragic twist. And that's when Jason Kelce struck again, pointing at the Browns and saying what everyone else was too polite to admit. He called it how it is, a team that looks solid on the surface but has cracks running all the way through the foundation. And Jimmy Haslam, he couldn't handle that. Because it's not just about flaws, it's about perception. Billionaires don't hate losing games. They hate losing control. They want fans believing everything's fine, that progress is happening, and that dropping another $120 on a jersey means we're building something special. But Kelce tore that illusion to shreds in one sentence. With just a few blunt words, he bulldozed the fantasy and left Cleveland exposed, not as a rising powerhouse, but as the NFL's version of a never-ending reality show, a franchise where every season ends the same way, with drama, disappointment, and fans wondering if the curse is ever gonna break. And that's the wild part. The Browns can't escape their own shadow, no matter how hard they try. They can stack the roster with talent, ride a temporary hot streak, maybe even sneak their way into the playoffs. But one honest comment from a retired lineman sends the entire building into chaos. It's not even about football anymore. It's about pride.
Can't blame anybody who says, I don't necessarily trust this coaching staff to develop a quarterback or to evaluate the quarterback position. They've made some really oddball decisions at this position over the last several years. And I don't blame anybody for questioning, do these guys actually know what they're doing?
I don't think that's unfair at all. The thing I would say is that they're desperate. They're very desperate. Like the entire organization is desperate. And if you really think they're going back to the coaches' offices and all getting around the table after sessions and being like, guys, Shedeur is unbelievable, but I really think we should try to prove that Dylan is better than him because we drafted him too.
Ego and the tragic comedy of a franchise that keeps tripping over its own shoelaces while insisting everything's fine. If you really want to understand why Jason Kelce's words hit Cleveland like a bomb, just look at the receipts. This isn't about hurt feelings. It's about numbers. It's about contracts, injuries, and a division so brutal that good enough means you're already halfway to the morgue. The AFC North isn't forgiving. It's survival of the toughest. And Cleveland keeps showing up with emotional baggage instead of backup plans. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be the savior, but at this point, he's either hurt rusty, or out there looking like a guy who accidentally wandered onto the field from a weekend flag football league. And every single time, fans convince themselves maybe this is the week he turns back into Houston Watson, reality slaps them with a $230 million reminder. Guaranteed money doesn't buy miracles. It just buys front row seats to fresh disappointment. And then, like a cosmic joke, here comes Joe Flacco, the ultimate punchline. The man was practically retired, probably more focused on choosing lawn fertilizer than studying film. Yet he shows up in Cleveland, shakes off the dust, and starts out playing Watson like it's light work. Fans were cheering, sure, but deep down, they knew it wasn't a feel-good story. It was an indictment. It was the universe holding up a glowing neon sign saying, "You paid how much for that guy?"
You were right, and I was wrong. We ain't never seen nothing like shit.
I told you. Let's go.
Because when you said that early on, I'm like, what are you talking about? They carried the games in Oklahoma, but that was just Oklahoma. That was for Baker. It was like the Oklahoma fan base. They carried the games in Norman, Browns games in Norman. I'm like, that was just as big.
Are you telling me that this is the biggest circus the Browns have ever been a part of?
Yes.
Jay, you not.
Yes.
Wait, because I remember, like, I'm not draft, but
told you.
I remember.
And that's where the real nightmare begins, the cap space. The Browns don't just have a quarterback problem, they've got a financial chokehold. Watson's contract has them strapped tighter than an overzealous TSA pat-down. Nearly a quarter of the entire salary cap is tied up in one player who can't even stay on the field. And that's why Kelce's words hit like thunder, because behind the fancy headlines and forced optimism, everyone knows the truth. The Browns are paying superstar money for sideline mediocrity, and there's no easy way out. And that's the real issue. The Browns are out here trying to duct tape a sinking ship instead of actually building the kind of depth it takes to survive in the AFC North. You can't just plug holes and hope for the best in this division. This isn't some friendly neighborhood league where everyone's mediocre and first place falls in your lap. No, this is straight up NFL Hunger Games, and Cleveland keeps showing up with plastic armor. Let's break it down. The Ravens are loaded. Lamar Jackson's out there playing video game football like he's got cheat codes installed. Mark Andrews catches everything within a 5-mile radius. And that defense, it doesn't just hit, it haunts quarterbacks in their sleep. Then you've got the Bengals with Joe Burrow, a man so smooth he could probably throw touchdowns blindfolded with one arm tied behind his back. And the Steelers, they might not even know who their quarterback is, but Mike Tomlin still finds a way to win 9 or 10 games every single year. The man refuses to lose. It's in his DNA. So where does that leave the Browns? Exactly where Jason Kelce said, in trouble. They're like the guy who shows up to a heavyweight fight wearing pool floaties, praying nobody notices. Sure, their defense looked elite last season, but anyone who knows football knows dominance doesn't last forever. Injuries hit, players age, coordinators get hired away, and suddenly
Sanders is expected to start for the Cleveland Browns.
How about that?
Friday night in their preseason opener.
I'd be excited, obviously, if I'm a Browns fan. Like the fact that you get to see him, like that's fun. Like if you're a fan of that team, that's fun that you get to see this guy that is this huge polarizing figure, especially coming out of this NFL draft. I wonder if it's kind of a disservice to him, though.
How?
Because he's been the 4th string quarterback, like, and you're just kind of throwing him in there. I don't know.
If I'm the 4th string quarterback and I get named the starter, I want it.
That unstoppable wall looks mortal again. And when that happens, all the weight shifts back to the offense, which, right now, is being held hostage by a contract so awful it should be analyzed in an economics disaster course. But wait, it gets better. Let's talk about the injury curse. The Browns' medical staff probably feels more like a trauma unit than a football department at this point. Every week, it's the same sad story. Another player down, another key starter questionable, another MRI Monday. It's like deja vu wrapped in bad luck. And that's what makes Kelce's comments sting even more. He didn't leak some secret. He just said out loud what every Cleveland fan mumbles under their breath after the 3rd injury update of the week. Jason Kelce didn't expose the Browns, he summarized them. A team built on hope, duct tape, and denial, trapped in a division where mercy doesn't exist. And the funniest part, everyone knows he's right. Even the fans laughing through the pain do. This team is one bad break away from imploding. And let's be honest, with the Browns' kind of luck, that break might as well already be on the schedule. Everyone sees it coming. The fans know it, the rivals smell it. Sure, Cleveland's got stars on defense, some flashy playmakers on offense, and a coaching staff that for now seems to have a grip on things. But paper doesn't win in the AFC North. Reality does, and reality's brutal. It says you need a steady quarterback, cap space that breathes, and players built to survive the grind. The Ravens, Bengals, and Steelers all have that mix. Cleveland doesn't. Not even close. Jimmy Haslam can stomp around, send out feel-good press releases, and flash those trust the process smiles all he wants. But he can't outrun the numbers. The math doesn't lie. The division doesn't care. And that monstrous contract hanging around his neck is not disappearing anytime soon. Even Joe Flacco's magical cameo, as wild and nostalgic as it was, couldn't hide the truth. Cleveland's still staring down the barrel of its own mistakes, a team built on hope but haunted by history. Jason Kelce didn't throw shade. He just spoke facts that everyone else was too polite to say out loud. And the receipts, they back him up, line by line. So yeah, Cleveland, Kelce called it exactly how he saw it. You're in trouble. You've been in trouble. And until this franchise faces its reflection instead of fighting it, that cycle of chaos isn't going anywhere. Like it or not, the truth's out, and the whole league's watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you on the next one.